A podcast for change. This is a special episode, episode 15, where we are going to be discussing the Trump indictment that Trump himself announced on Truth Social last night. The Department of Justice has not made any type of announcement because the indictment is sealed. And currently, the indictment is sealed until Tuesday, when the former president is scheduled to appear in federal court in Miami, Florida, for arraignment. We are going to start with the words of then candidate Trump in 2016.
In my administration, I'm going to enforce all laws concerning the protection of classified information. No one will be above the law.
Now, here he was talking about Hillary Clinton. And once Trump was elected president, he did put a law in place that makes mishandling classified documents a felony. How the tables have turned. I, as a liberal Democrat, do not celebrate the indictment of a former president for any reason. Because a current president, a former president, they should not be doing anything to be indicted on. And I want to welcome everyone that joins, whether you're watching live or on the replay. If you are live and you want to jump into the conversation, there's a link in the description where you can appear on screen to voice your opinion. You can put your opinion in the comments. If you are not ready for your close-up, you can turn off the camera and you can appear on screen, but it will just be audio only. So those options are open to you. This isn't just about hearing me speak. This podcast is now and always will be open to all points of view, whether I agree with them or not. It's about bridging the gap and civil dialogue between different opinions. You're not going to hear me make fun of the president or anyone who supports the president, anyone who's a Republican. That's not what I'm about. That's not what this podcast is about. So there's a lot of speculation online and in the media as to what the charges are. We don't know. There is only speculation at this point. The indictment is sealed, and it is common in federal court that we won't know the actual charges until the indictment is unsealed at the time of arraignment, which means Tuesday at, I believe, 3:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The speculation is that there's obstruction. There's an obstruction charge. There is mishandling the documents, and that there are violations of the Espionage Act. Violations of the Espionage Act do not mean that Trump is a spy. That wouldn't be the charge. That would be under the willful retention of documents that include, that are classified, that include sensitive information, and or sharing any of that sensitive information with someone that doesn't have clearance. And that could be anyone. That could be a person that worked at Mar-a-Lago up to a foreign adversary. We aren't going to know until Tuesday, unless the prosecution files a motion in the federal court asking that the indictment be unsealed early. So either at some point today or at some point on Monday. So there will be more to come on this. there's a lot of freaking out going on. And it is human for people who support President Trump to be losing their ever-loving minds right now and seeing this as a betrayal, a witch hunt, a hoax. It's not a hoax. This was a real grand jury in, a real federal grand jury in Miami, Florida. It's a real indictment. So just in that alone, it's not a hoax. It's not pretend. It's not a prank. You know, the Trump has been pretty public about having documents that he felt he should be able to keep, that the National Archives has been going back and forth. No, you can't keep them. He's claimed that there's, supposed to be some negotiation. And to an extent, that may be true. It would depend on the document that he wants to keep, the information that was in it, what departments that document or the contents thereof affected. There is no blanket allowance for a president or a vice president, because in the Presidential Records Act, vice presidential records are treated the same as presidential records. There's no automatic blanket, I get to keep everything because I'm president or I was president. That's not a thing. You can claim it's a thing, but it's not. So we have to decide as a country, as individuals, do you believe in the rule of law? Do you believe that people who commit crimes should be arrested for those crimes, run through the court system and a jury of their peers, or in certain cases, where it's a bench trial, before a judge? Do you believe in that? And if you do you only believe in the rule of law for certain people? Do you only believe in the rule of law for people you don't like? Or do you believe in justice for justice's sake? And that's not a question that anyone needs to, it's not an answer anyone needs to provide to me or to anyone else. That is something to look within yourself and answer for yourself. Because if you believe in the rule of law across the board, and Trump, who at the time was a private citizen, yes, a former president, private citizen nonetheless, on the same level as George Bush, Barack Obama, Bill Clinton, and we'll throw in Jimmy Carter, who are the remaining living presidents, former presidents. And if there's evidence that a crime has been committed, and that evidence is presented to a grand jury, and it is worth noting that this was a Florida jury. That's it's a red state. It's predominantly Republican. So it would stand to reason that there is a very good chance that the people on the grand jury, that some of them were Trump supporters or are Trump supporters. The thing is, when you're on a grand jury, and I was once privileged to be on a county grand jury. It was one day a week for like 14 weeks. You take an oath and you swear that you're there basically to represent the law and the facts of a case, that you put aside, your everything, your bias, your political beliefs, your religious beliefs. You're supposed to put all that aside, and you listen to the evidence presented. And once the prosecutor is done, you decide if the prosecution has presented enough evidence, and that's through witnesses, through people speaking under oath, giving testimony. You decide whether or not the prosecution has presented enough evidence that would support a formal charge, whether you like it or not. That is your duty as a grand juror, that, if evidence presented supports a charge, you issue an indictment. It is not President Biden issuing an indictment. It is not Attorney General Merrick Garland issuing an indictment. It is not Prosecutor Jack Smith issuing an indictment. It is the grand jury from Miami, Florida, federal grand jury, that issues the indictment. In this case, in this instance, there are grand juries all over. They're everywhere. You'll find them at the state level. You find them at federal level. That's who issues the indictment. So, and I've been seeing ever since, Trump spilled the beans, because we wouldn't know otherwise unless Trump opened his mouth, which has been his problem for how long? There's a thing, there's a saying in with criminal defense: stop self-snitching. And that seems to be a lot of what Trump does. Again, we don't know exactly what the charges are. Some have referenced obstruction, violating the Espionage Act, which is the willful retention of classified documents and or the dissemination of those documents. I believe in the rule of law. And, as a Democrat, again, I do not celebrate this indictment. It breaks my heart that a former president has been indicted. But one of the things we need to decide as a country, as citizens, is whether we're going to hold people accountable. It can't just be the politicians that we don't like or that we don't agree with. It has to be across the board. So if a politician, just like any average citizen, if they commit a crime and there's enough evidence for a grand jury to indict, and some may argue that it's a very low bar for a grand jury. I would argue back, not against a former president. I would imagine that the bar in this case had to be extremely high, simply because the relevant defendant is a former president. And yes, this is the first time a former president is being federally indicted. And that's probably only because Gerald Ford pardoned Richard Nixon like 30 days after Nixon left office. Because Nixon also committed crimes. He just hadn't been indicted yet. Congress impeached him before he was indicted. It's, and I do see, people on my side celebrating. And while I disagree with that, it is human. Just as seeing Trump supporters lose their minds, that's human too. I imagine that it can't be easy to see someone that you, for whatever reason, believe in and that you've trusted, that maybe you've even donated money to. You've put your money where your mouth is. It can't be easy to see this person that you've held in esteem, that you've put on a pedestal, be indicted on felony charges. It's it's the same thing with any high profile person in entertainment or person in sports, that it's, there's this I can't believe it. So I have compassion for Trump supporters. I empathize. I'm not here to make fun of anyone. I'm not here to scream and holler. But all we know so far is, and that's from Trump, is that he's been indicted. There's been reporting that it's 7 counts. There's nothing definitive on what those counts are because the indictment is, as of right now, sealed. Yes, the prosecution can motion the court to have it unsealed early. Trump is supposed to appear Tuesday at like 3 p.m. Eastern, and that will be for arraignment. He will be fingerprinted, a mugshot will be taken, and he will enter a plea on those charges. And, at that point, the indictment will be unsealed, the charges will be read, and he'll issue a plea of either guilty or not guilty by reason of insanity, like whatever it is. And, and then at that point, both sides will argue for just what's going to come next. I seriously doubt that the prosecution is going to push for remand, which would be Trump being in jail until the trial is held. I highly, highly doubt that that's going to be the position of the prosecution, of the special prosecutor. There will most likely be some sort of bail set, possibly surrender his passport so that he doesn't leave the country before trial. But again, this is a former president we're talking about. It would not surprise me if he receives special treatment. I don't see Trump with an ankle monitor. I don't see any of that. I would imagine that he will be released on his own recognizance, possibly, some type of bail. It's also worth noting that federal mugshots are not released to the public. Federal cases are not. There won't be a public camera as of today. because generally federal cases they aren't live streamed, they aren't televised. That may change for this case or any case involving Trump, because there is so much interest across the country. There will be more to come once the indictment is unsealed, whenever that is. And, for people that want to talk about Biden, what about Hillary? The Hillary emails was investigated. It was investigated by Republicans. And they didn't issue any charges. So we're not going to go back now. And just because we hate Hillary, we're going to charge her for mishandling emails. Like, enough already. I know people don't like her, but just because you don't like someone doesn't mean that they committed a crime. Just because you want it to be true. You have to look at actual evidence, and Republicans have done that repeatedly when it comes to Hillary Clinton. And they've had every opportunity to recommend charges, and that didn't happen. So let's just be done with Hillary. And, if the investigations had shown that Hillary committed crimes and it was supported, to charge her with something, then she should have been charged. And she hasn't been. So, let's move on from that. I understand people don't like her. Not liking someone doesn't make them a criminal. Just like people that don't like Donald Trump, it doesn't automatically make him a criminal. That he's been indicted doesn't make him guilty. He is afforded the rights of every citizen that has been charged with a crime. Innocent until proven guilty. Does him running his mouth about, yes, I had the documents, I'm allowed to keep them? No, you're not. I can do what I want with them? No, you can't. Will that probably hurt his defense? Yeah. Shut up about it, dude. If you let your lawyers do their thing. Let them do what you pay them to do. Shut up. Because with his words, he digs the hole deeper for himself. Stop it. We want to talk about Biden and or Pence, who, during their time as vice president or after they were vice president, had documents in their possession that they weren't supposed to have. We can talk about that. Mike Pence, from what I understand, and from what I understand as to both, when Mike Pence was notified that, hey, you have docs too, it's my understanding that he notified the FBI. When the same thing with Biden, he notified the DOJ. It's my understanding that they both returned the docs that they had. No muss, no fuss. They didn't have to be subpoenaed. They didn't go back and forth for 18 months. They didn't argue with anybody to say that, I'm allowed to keep these. They gave them back. And my understanding is that, there won't be any charges brought against former Vice President Mike Pence. Okay. And the investigation into the documents that Joe Biden had, that's still ongoing. So there may be charges against Joe Biden. We don't know yet. But here's another thing to consider. It is longstanding DOJ policy to not charge a sitting president with any crime. The last time we heard about that was with the Mueller report. That Trump was a sitting president at the time, so there would be no charges against a sitting president. Same standard applies to Biden. So if it turns out that, that he mishandled any of the classified documents that were in his possession, nobody's going to see charges on that until Biden is out of office, if at all. It's going to depend. It depends on the facts of that case. So, it's not that DOJ is picking and choosing. It's Biden is currently a sitting president. So it's their longstanding policy to not charge a sitting president. If we were cool with not charging Trump as a sitting president on whatever, we have to be cool with not charging Biden while he's a sitting president. There's a question as to whether, either mishandling documents or whatever this bribery thing is that happened supposedly when Biden was vice president. Can actions potentially taken while a vice president or outside of an active presidential administration, can that be grounds for oh my God, what is it called? for Congress to try to get rid of Joe Biden as president? That can, that's up for debate. I see a lot of people either hooting and hollering and celebrating, which it's not. This isn't something, on one hand, it's not something to celebrate because we never want to see someone who either holds the title of POTUS or who held the title of POTUS indicted for anything. If you were the leader of the free world, you're supposed to carry yourself differently. So in that sense, it's it's not happy that a former president has been indicted. But then on the flip of it, if we're a nation of laws and we follow the rule of law and there is evidence that a crime was committed, and this has nothing to do with a crime committed by Trump while he was president, because all this stuff has come after his presidency, so while he was a private citizen. If there's evidence to support an indictment doesn't mean guilt. It doesn't mean conviction. It's evidence of a crime. Yeah, and if we believe in the rule of law and we're a country of laws, then it's a good thing for America. It shows that no one is above the law. Not even someone who held the title of president. This is not the weaponization of the government. The weaponization of government would be charging someone who's a political rival that did absolutely nothing wrong, and you're faking evidence, and you're faking testimony, and that's weaponization. Or you know where you're threatening someone with a crime simply because they're a political rival. And this is not election interference. These investigations were going on before Trump entered the presidential race for 2024. It could be argued that his motivation for entering the race was to avoid prosecution. That he rolled the dice that DOJ wouldn't want the look of investigating a former president and presidential candidate, that they'd back off. And this is hypothetical, because he didn't have to enter the race when he did. He's Trump. He could have waited to see who threw their hat in the ring and jumped in a couple months before the Republican primary or the first Republican debate, because he would have made the money. He didn't need to come out so early. So there is a legitimate question as to why did he? What's the deal? And if it was to avoid prosecution, well, then that shows that he knew he did something wrong. There are reportedly audio tapes where he admitted that he had a document, at least one, that had sensitive information in it, that he showed to someone else, that he didn't declassify. Like he admitted on this audio tape that he didn't declassify this document. And I mean, we can look at the relevant part of the Espionage Act, because this document, at least in this one audio recording, was about some type of attack on Iran. And, by any stretch, that would be considered defense information, or, and if you look at the Espionage Act, whether you were allowed to have a document, whether you weren't supposed to have a document, if you copy it, if you take it, blah de blah. It doesn't matter. If you take that document, you won't give it back. You share the information within that document with someone who is not doesn't have clearance. It's you've broken that law. And but I mean, we're going to find out on Tuesday, if not Monday, or even possibly today, if the prosecution moves to unseal the indictment. That's when we're going to get the actual specific charges, the specific code that, the indictment is issued under. There's rumored to be a conspiracy charge, which is also part of, the Espionage Act. And I'm looking at 18 U.S. Code, Section 793, G. Two or more persons conspire to violate any of the foregoing provisions of this section, and one or more of such persons do any act to affect the object of the conspiracy, each of the parties to such conspiracy shall be subject to the punishment provided for the offense, which is the object of such conspiracy. Section H of this is interesting because that talks about, it's like Section H1. Any person convicted of a violation of this section shall forfeit to the United States, irrespective of any provision of state law, any property constituting or derived from any proceeds the person obtained directly or indirectly from any foreign government or any faction or party or military or naval force within a foreign country, whether recognized or unrecognized by the United States as a result of such violation. It talks about forfeiture of property. And in sections A through F talk about, whether you're allowed to have the document or not allowed to have the document, and then just what you do with it. Whether there's a willful transmission of the information or through gross negligence. It depends on the section. We can also look at the Presidential Records Act. Blah, blah, blah. Presidential Records Act establishes that presidential records automatically transfer into the legal custody of the archivist as soon as the president leaves office. So any of the documents were to be automatically transferred into the legal custody of the archivist. And that's part of the National Archives, because it's the National Archives and Records Administration. It doesn't matter whether they were originals or copies, because you're not supposed to copy classified documents. And the latest reporting is that the president has, I don't want to say fired, but he's not going to be using, he's bringing in a different attorney for this. People are freaking out about that Judge Eileen Cannon, who was appointed by Trump, appears to be on the subpoena. And, because when dealing with the subpoena, the FBI subpoena to go in and get the documents and take documents and all that sort of thing, she appointed a special master, to look at different things. And very simply, it's about the rule of law. If you believe in the rule of law and believe that we are a nation of laws, then just let it play out. We find out on Tuesday what the actual charges will be, and it will, the indictment, depending upon how it's written, it may, or I expect that it will go into what it specifically will say. I expect that it will spell out exactly what was done or what's being alleged. It will go through, on such and such a date, Trump did this. Like, here are the things that you did that fall under these different laws that were broken. And then those are the elements that the prosecution will have to prove in court. And, with it being in, like, I also don't want to hear, or at least I think it's bullshit, when people are like, oh, well, of course he was indicted in New York because they hate him in New York. He was just indicted in Florida, and they're supposed to love him in Florida. Like, let's stop dogging grand juries who are merely keeping to their oaths. We'll find out on Tuesday what the actual charges are, what he's been indicted on. And then he'll issue a plea. A trial date will be set. And it may or may not actually go to trial. Like most federal cases, they don't go to trial. They usually settle before that. And they may settle for no jail time. So, all this, oh my God, we're a banana republic. Biden's trying to get Trump out of the race. No. Ask yourself whether or not you believe in the rule of law, and whether or not you believe that we're a nation of laws, and whether or not you believe that people who commit a crime should be held accountable. Because if the former president actually committed a crime and you think he should get a pass simply because he was a former president, that a former president shouldn't be, they should be able to do whatever they want. They should be able to commit crimes and get away with it. Then shut up about Biden. We're not going to do things both ways. Things have to be applied across the board. That's fairness. And if there is actual evidence that comes out that Joe Biden committed a crime to be indicted on and charged with, charge him. I believe in the rule of law. I believe that it should be applied equally where there is evidence, actual evidence, admissible evidence. The thing with the bribery and the document that was reviewed by the oversight committee that proves it. No, it does not. The FBI form FD 1023 is an initial report of a conversation with a confidential human source. That's all it is. It is not proof of anything. It is like if you're at home and you hear some suspicious noise outside and you call the police. Hey, I heard a suspicious noise. Police come out and they interview you. What did you hear? What time was it? Did you see anything else? Blah, blah, blah. That initial report, that's the same thing as an FD 1023. Because then when you give your initial report to the police, they then take that report and they investigate. And they locate evidence if there is any. And then depending upon what evidence is located, it's then presented to the DA to determine whether or not there's enough to support an actual charge and, enough to get a conviction. We see it all the time with SA cases. That if it's, where's the evidence? What evidence is there supposed to be? I think we need to just all chill out, wait till Tuesday or whenever the indictment is unsealed. And then you wait for the trial. It is interesting that a millionaire, billionaire, whatever he is, within an hour of announcing that he was indicted, sent out a fundraising email. For what? There's talk of, he was indicted on the same day that, proof of the Biden bribery scheme came out. Because Trump opened his mouth. If he kept his mouth shut, no one would know about this until Tuesday, maybe Monday night or Tuesday morning. There'd be some leaks. But other than that, we wouldn't know. And and all right, Trump apparently posted on Truth Social, dude, shut up. That apparently Walt Nauta, who is Trump's personal aide at Mar-a-Lago, will also be indicted. There is reporting that one of the charges is conspiracy. So with conspiracy, you need 2 or more people. So he may be that second person, part of that conspiracy charge. Um, it could be anything that he was in possession of classified docs himself in the moving of the documents. There's calls for on the people that are Republicans running for president that they should all suspend their campaigns and support Trump. One of the candidates, I believe it's Asa Hutchinson, has publicly called for Trump to bow out of the race. On the flip side of that, candidate Vivek, I don't remember his last name. He has already come out and said that if he's elected president, he will pardon Trump, because that's not a blatant grab for voters. Like, hey, if Trump can't serve because he's in jail, I'll take your vote. Mitt Romney has come out with a statement. Like all Americans, Mr. Trump is entitled to the presumption of innocence, which is true. Innocent until proven guilty. The government has the burden of proving its charges beyond a reasonable doubt and securing a unanimous verdict by a South Florida jury. By all appearances, the Justice Department and special counsel have exercised due care, affording Mr. Trump the time and opportunity to avoid charges that would not generally have been afforded to others. Mr. Trump brought these charges upon himself by not only taking classified documents, but by refusing to simply return them when given numerous opportunities to do so. These allegations are serious, and if proven, would be consistent with his other actions offensive to the national interest, such as withholding defensive weapons from Ukraine for political reasons and failing to defend the Capitol from violent attack and insurrection. So that is Mitt Romney's statement, referencing at the end the 2 reasons why Trump was impeached during his presidency. It's wait till Tuesday and we'll see what happens. We'll see what he's charged with, and you just let the court go through its normal process. If you believe in the rule of law, and if you believe that we are a nation of laws. If, on the other hand, you believe that presidents can do anything that they want, whether it's legal or illegal, like if you believe that, because I have had people comment that even if Trump is convicted, like let's say one of the charges is that he shared information or sold information to a foreign adversary. I've had people comment that they'd still vote for him. And here's another, like, which to me is ridiculous. Like, I want a president that didn't commit crimes. And here's another thing to consider. Sorry. Being indicted, being convicted, does not currently prevent Trump from running for office, being elected for office, or serving as president. There is nothing in the Constitution under the requirements for president that speak about a felon. If this gets through to where Trump is convicted on whatever crimes he's charged with, there is nothing in the Constitution that says a convicted felon cannot run for president or cannot be president and serve as president from jail, which is outrageous to me. But that's another story for another day. This is just where we are so far. Again, I'm not celebrating. I think it's heartbreaking for a president to be indicted or a former president to be indicted. You know, but we're going to find out more on Tuesday or whenever the indictment is unsealed. I think President Trump, I think that he would do well to stop talking about it, because the statements that he makes now, they can be used against him in court. If he talks now about, like, yeah, I had the docs and I wasn't giving them back. I'm allowed to keep them, which no, he's not. I'm allowed to show them and do whatever I want. No, you're not. If he starts talking like that, all the prosecutor has to do is roll the tape. Like, shut, as my brother would say, shut your pie hole. Like, he does himself such a disservice. Stop self-snitching. Stop admitting to the things that you're charged with or could be argued against you. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. Like, but we'll see when the indictment is unsealed. I personally question the fundraising request within an hour of him announcing that he was indicted. I don't want to hear anything about, like, oh, it was the same day, that the oversight committee saw the Biden docs. Trump ran his mouth. It's not the DOJ talking. It's not Merrick Garland talking. It's not Jack Smith talking. It's not the White House talking. It's not Democrats that came out with this information. It was Trump. He should just stop. Let his attorneys speak for him. That's what they're there for. If he gets asked about it, no comment. It's that simple. But as this unfolds, we will have more. I thank everyone that has stopped by either live or on the replay. I appreciate you. Please like, comment, subscribe if you would be so inclined. If you are interested in supporting the channel, there are links in the description, and thanks in advance and my appreciation for that as well. I hope everyone has a great weekend and talk to you later.